One of the biggest mistakes I see DIYers making when they're creating graphics for their online business in places like Canva is that they are over designing their graphics. They're adding too many fonts, too many colors, too many elements. It's just becoming too busy. And what this is actually doing is not only making your graphics take you longer to design, making them harder to design, but they're actually not as powerful when they are over designed and overcomplicated. And so I want to talk to you today about the minimalist mindset when it comes to your designs. Now, I'm not saying that your designs need to be minimal as in a design aesthetic. You'll see that my brand is far from minimal, but we can utilize some specific thinking around the way that we do design to create more impact when we are designing. Because not only is this easier, it often creates a bigger impact, which is all around what we want. We want bigger bang for our buck whenever we're doing anything for our business, because our time is money. If you're watching on YouTube and you are ready to embrace this minimalist mindset when you're designing, make sure you hit like so I know that you are in this. So hi, if we have not met before, my name is Jacqui and I am a graphic designer who specializes in helping online business owners create incredible designs and branding within Canva for their own businesses. And this is the stuff that I love, because when you do this right, you are beginning to stand out, you're beginning to make a real mark in your industry, and you're actually enjoying the process without being overwhelmed every time you open up Canva to make a graphic for your business. So in this episode, I'm going to step you through 5 things you need to cut back on with your minimalist designs and 5 things you need to be focusing more time on. So firstly, let's talk about the 5 areas where you need to cut back. Firstly, I want to speak to Instagram. If you are an online business owner on Instagram, which I know so many of you are, I want to take the pressure off a little bit. I want you to just think, you know what? Not all of my posts need to be really intricately designed and full of interest. I'm going to speak to some more design principles in a moment. But first, I just want to take the pressure off, because things like Instagram stories and Instagram reel covers do not need to be perfectly designed. In fact, these often do you more harm than good. Instagram is a platform where that more authentic native style content usually performs just as well, if not better than that over-designed content. So when you're doing your Instagram stories, don't feel like there's any need to jump onto Canva and create this huge range of curated content. You can do this sometimes if you want to, but that's not necessary. What I recommend instead is just using consistent font inside your Instagram stories and using a color that you can that's closest to your brand colors. And then in terms of reel covers, almost doing the same thing. Don't feel like you need to go into Canva and design this perfect reel cover. Think about actually using maybe a screen grab or a screenshot from your actual reel, adding in some text in your closest brand color and font on Instagram, and using that as your reel cover. This not only is a far quicker process, I know because I do this all the time myself as well, but it also usually is more effective because it's more native or relates to the reel even more, so people can have that connection between the reel cover and the reel itself. All right, my second design tip for embracing the minimalist mindset in your designs is overcrowding your posts. This is a really big one. Oftentimes I see business owners, they do a design and then they second guess themselves. They think, is this interesting enough? Is this professional enough? Is this fancy enough for my business? And then what they do is they add in an extra color, they add in an extra element or an extra 5 elements. By elements, I mean like little graphics, like a little illustration or a little icon or a little photo. And they add in too much stuff. And by the end, it actually looks more unprofessional than when they first started and it looked bland. I'm going to share with you in the what to focus your time on section what you should actually do here. But for the meantime, just think about, do I need to add all of this in? I was on actually a coaching call today with a client, and I was just reminding them that while we were collecting elements for their brand, we didn't have to add in 1,000 of different elements over all our designs or make the elements really large and make them really interesting. What we actually needed to do was use the elements in a stripped back way where the elements provided interest to the design without overcomplicating things, without taking away from the text or the main message of the graphic. Because your graphics aren't just there to be beautiful, your graphics are there to communicate. So don't over add things in. Make sure your text is always the hero and avoid making things too busy with too many pieces of text so that the text becomes convoluted, or too many elements or too many colors that it just becomes busy or clash. Clashing is a big problem I see regularly. The next thing to avoid if you want to embrace design minimalism is to not change things up all the time. Often we get this shiny object syndrome. We're like, oh, that's a cute template, or that's a cute color, or that's a cute font, or that's a this, that, blah, blah, blah. You know, try not to get caught up with all the pretty things and embrace doing the same thing over and over again, using the same 2 or 3 fonts in your branding, using the same 2 to 6, 10 colors, usually a similar range of colors, and using those colors repeatedly, not changing up the colors every post or every 3 posts, doing them consistently. And the same with your branding elements, using the same patterns or icons or textures over and over again rather than reinventing the wheel. This not only makes your designs have a huge level of consistency and professionalism, but it also makes them so much easier to design because you're just reusing things you've already found and created in the past. Next up is not to use too many font combinations. This is a really big one. And so like I mentioned in the last point, instead of just changing fonts all the time, stick to the same fonts. But even when you're sticking to those same fonts, I remember when I first learned this rule, it blew my mind. I was like, oh, I should use like this font and this font because I want to represent this and I want to represent this, and this post is a little bit different, so I want to represent this something different. And like I was just too interested in using too many different fonts that what I did was I used so many fonts that the design started to fall apart. My graphics started to look haphazard, not look like they were from this one cohesive brand and business family. Like they felt too different and too all over the place. And so what I want you to do instead is only use 1, 2, or 3 fonts in your branding total. For me, I actually only have 2 fonts. I have Poppins, which I use really regularly. I use the bold and the thin version, but it all still looks really cohesive because it's the same kind of font. And I use a font I think called Handleson, and I use that just really, really sparingly as a bit of an accent font. That's what I call it when I teach my students. We have our heading font, body font, subheading font, accent font, and some of these fonts can actually be the same. We don't have to have wildly different fonts for all of these uses in our business. We can actually reuse fonts just in different sizing or in different capacities. And lastly, which is a big one, especially when we open up Canva, I was talking to a client again today, and they said that when they opened up Canva, they just felt like a kid in a candy store. Like there was just so many options and there was too many things just grabbing for their attention that they just had to try. And what that meant was their design was like really busy and looked amateur and all over the place because they weren't utilizing this idea of minimalism. Even though their branding didn't need to be minimal in the sense of like totally stripped back and clean, but did need to be really intentional. And so when you're jumping into Canva, as I said, don't get caught up with all the different fonts and elements, but also don't get caught up with the different effects and filters that you see. There are lots of different filters and effects that you can apply to your text, you can apply to your photos, you can apply to your images. Try to keep it simple. If you are going to use an effect or your text, for example, like say the hollowed out effect or the shadow effect, just use one effect, not even just in one graphic, pretty much over the whole life of your business. I want you using the glow in one post and then the hollow effect in a different post and then a shadow in a different post. Try to keep that consistent in your branding as well, using one sort of effect over and over and over again, or no effects at all. All right, so those are the things you want to start avoiding if you want to embrace that minimalist mindset in your designs and in your Canva graphics. Now what I want to speak to is the things that I want you to focus on, things I want you to put more time towards. And so those 5 things are these. Firstly, focusing on brand consistency. I mentioned this earlier, but I really want to hone in on it because this is such a key point for your designs, not feeling haphazard and all over the place and really busy, and having that cohesion between everything. And that is brand consistency, using those same fonts over and over, using those same colors over and over. So what I mean by that is every single post on Instagram, every single flyer you put out, every single Facebook banner, every single design on your website, they all need to feature the same colors, the same fonts, and the same graphics and the same styles. So stick to that clear brand style. All right, the next tip I want you to focus more time on is high converting social media graphics. Instead of focusing on just making lots of reel covers that you don't really need to be making that don't perform, instead of focusing on creating lots of random haphazard posts, focus on posts that perform. You don't need to post every day on Instagram. You could even post 2 to 3 times a week on Instagram, but if that content is high quality, that's what's going to make you be seen. That's what's going to help you to stand out. Doing posts that are doing really well right now, like a carousel post or in particular Instagram reels. And again, you don't even have to over design those Instagram reels. And that carousel post, instead of designing a brand new carousel every time you post a carousel, reuse your past designs. I spoke about this last week in my video, so make sure you go back and give that a listen if you're interested. The next thing I want you to make sure you're focusing on is engagement-based content. Don't just create content just for the sake of it, putting it out there in the world and see what happens, particularly with Instagram or even with a flyer, like whatever you're doing. Have a clear purpose on why you're creating that graphic and give people whatever that next step is. If it's a flyer, it might be to go to your website. If it's an Instagram post, it might be to follow along for more or to click the link in your bio to book a call with you or to download that lead magnet. Think about the purpose of whatever design you're doing and make sure there's one clear call to action, not 15 different things that they should be directed to, but one clear call to action. And not even like your 2 bad options would be having lots of different things for them to do, like follow me for more and like this and also share this and also comment below and also click on the link in my bio. That's too many things. Keep it simple and also do give them something to do rather than just having it a post just sits out there for the sake of it. Give them something to do. It doesn't have to be a strong sales point like click the link in my bio to download this X freebie. It could even just be like this post or save this post. Something that gives them a next step is really important as well. Something else I want you to focus more time on is typography and readability. Those are just fancy words to say you really need to make sure that your posts are readable and engaging. And so instead of focusing on having these really intricate fancy pants fonts that are really hard to read, maybe it's time to have a simpler font that's going to help your audience to read your post because they're not going to work hard to read a font that's really illegible. That goes for cursive fonts or even like really fancy what we call serif fonts that are just all over the place. And not just your fonts, also focus on the sizing of your text, making sure it's large enough to read. And this is the point I wanted to share before. If you feel like your design's looking boring and you're just tempted to add in 1,000 more elements or colors, try first creating contrast in the sizing of your text. I've shared about this a little bit, but it's because I think it's so important. Have the hooky part of your graphic, whether it's a flyer, again, or whether it's a presentation slide, or whether it's Instagram post, have the key text of your design. It should usually be around 2 to 5 words, sometimes a few more if they're not too long, and make that text quite large. And then make your subtext or your paragraph or your caption or something else that's a bit smaller, or your next piece of information, make that a bit smaller and sit that underneath. And have really high contrast, like size 50 for the heading and size 20 for your body text. Having that large contrast creates interest in your design without you having to overcomplicate that design by adding in more elements or more colors. And finally, I want you to embrace white space. This is another really hard one for DIYs because, again, we feel like we need to fill up all the space, but white space can actually be a good thing. It makes your designs look far more professional and less amateur in literally an instant. Make sure you keep key parts of your design away from the edges of your design to create margin around the outside of your design, and also making sure that you're leaving space for the eye to breathe. Not feeling like you have to fill every single gap with an element, but there can be white space there. There can be space where there's nothing in particular. It might just be the background color that's there. But as long as your design feels balanced, this will actually help your design to look more professional, even though it's more stripped back. Okay, so if you're feeling really excited by what I'm sharing here today and you want to start embracing some of this in your business, but you're not sure exactly how, I want to invite you to my free masterclass. It's called Design Tools to Get You to 100K. In here, I'm going to be talking about and giving you the templates you need to save time and create effective graphics for your business, as well as how to create those high converting graphics for your business. I've got examples and tips from clients that have actually moved their business from 0 to 100K, 100K plus, through the power of using strategic design in their business. I also want to show you some smart hacks to use inside Canva so you can beat the overwhelm, because I know that so many business owners, especially when we're starting out, we feel really overwhelmed of all the different options, all the different ideas, all the different pieces of information coming at us. And I want to help to demystify some of that and give you tangible steps, strategies, and ideas so that you can grow your business through design, through Canva in 2025. And the best part is it is 100% free. So make sure you go to whitedeer.com.au/design masterclass, and you can sign up there, get all the information, and begin to utilize the power of design to grow your business rather than to overwhelm you. And so as a recap today, I want you to focus on doing your designs in a way that is not overcomplicating things, not convoluting things just because you can, but keeping things consistent with your brands and fonts, not overdoing it with your elements, using text in its sizing strategically, and focus on doing things like strategic posts that are actually going to perform rather than just posting for the sake of it. So thank you for joining me for this episode, and I hope to see you at the Design Masterclass, and I will see you next week for another episode. Bye!